Is crossbreeding ethical? I'll let you be the judge. Back in the 1920s, a Soviet biologist named Ilya Ivanov tried to crossbreed humans with various other primate species. He was responsible for groundbreaking breakthroughs with artificial insemination, and with his use of insemination, he was able to use a stallion's sperm to fertilize up to 500 mares. Most stallions could only father like 20 to 30 if you were just doing it the natural way. This made him very popular among horse breeders, who came all the way from around the globe to work with them. He had more ambitions than just horse breeding though, and his interest revolved around hybridization between species. More specifically, Ivanov wanted to see if humans could reproduce with their closest known relatives. So he decided the best route to take with his project was to inject several female chimpanzees and orangutans with human, output. He started his experiments when they were green-lit by the Soviet Department of Scientific Institutions in 1926. None of his subjects succeeded in becoming pregnant, but determined to try again, Ivanov then tried to experiment with human woman and ape, output. However, he wasn't able to put his plans into motion from both opposition from his superiors and the death of his last orangutan donor. Any further tests were prevented when Ivanov was hit by a purge and ended up exiled and imprisoned in what is now Kazakhstan. Also known as the Angel of Death, Dr. Joseph Mengele was an anthropologist and physician who conducted numerous inhumane medical experiments on the prisoners under his watch. At the famous death camp he worked at, he was one of a number of medical professionals who selected victims to be sentenced to the gas chambers or be spared for his experimental research. He would attempt red fluid transfusions from one twin to the other, do amputations to try and sew it onto the other twin, stitch two twins together to form Siamese twins, infect one twin with typhus or another disease, and way too many other experiments. To the surprise of nobody, more often than not, the twins died during the procedures, or he would have them killed afterwards just to do an autopsy. If one twin died from a disease, he would often just kill the other to mark the differences between the sick and healthy subjects. The evil doctor was also very interested in heterochromia, where people have irises of different colors, and he would collect eyes and body parts of his victims and send them off for research. He would inject chemicals into victims' eyes to attempt to change their eye color. He also experimented on pregnant women before sending them off to the chambers, and caused pregnancies between family members, always under the guise of research. He also tried removing and operating on victims without anesthesia. Oh, and if that wasn't all disgusting enough, he tried to prove that Jewish and Romani people were genetically inferior through his morbid experimentation. While he was employed by the SS, Joseph sent his colleagues in Germany red fluids, body parts, organs, skeletons, and even more that had all been taken from folks under his care. Cynthia Crawford was born a fraternal twin with totally different red fluid type and tissue type than her twin sister. Now, unlike her twin, she was born without an amniotic sac, which baffled the medical community. Turns out, prior to her coming into this world, her father had been approached by agents within the OSS to participate in a secret government project. And it wasn't until she was in her mid-30s that she learned from her father that she was a hybrid created in a petri dish by a government program that utilized DNA from two different alien races added to human DNA. Throughout Cynthia's early years, she was taken to underground military medical facilities at night for testing and examinations, and during this time and throughout her life, she also encountered what she believed were alien abductions, examinations, impregnations, as well as miraculous healing and organ replacements. Throughout the 1950s and into the late 1970s, Cynthia tried to seek help and understanding of her experiences, but there were no support groups at that time, and she really couldn't find anybody who would believe her. She was chastised for having and using psychic powers, but her life changed when she gave up fear to consciously face those otherworldly beings, and that's when she learned they were her star family. They awakened her to the truth of her mission that brought her to this planet at this very special time in history. In 2003, Cynthia began making sculptures with the assistance of the various benevolent star beings that she had encountered and that other contactees had experienced. Cynthia dedicated her life to counseling, workshops, and talks, teaching everybody how we're connected to the star people and how to live in an integrated galactic society in the very near future. Sadly, she passed away in 2018, or maybe she just left her mortal body to be with her star family. The first successful human-animal hybrid was developed in a laboratory dish in Shanghai back in 2003. A team of scientists fused human cells in rabbit eggs, creating the embryos of a new creature that was half rabbit and half human. The research, reported by a scientist in China, was fiercely condemned by pro-life campaigners who described it as barbaric. More than 100 of the hybrids are said to have been made by fusing human skin cells with rabbit eggs. The resulting embryos were allowed to develop in laboratory dishes for several days before the scientists killed them to extract embryonic stem cells. These are the body's master cells, with the potential to become any kind of tissue. Experts hope in the future they can be used to grow replacement cells for treating a wide range of diseases such as Parkinson's and diabetes. Scientists in the US have previously mixed human cells and cow's eggs in a similar attempt to generate a source of embryonic stem cells without success. At one point, there was another team of scientists that reported the creation of a hermaphrodite embryo containing male and female cells. The Chinese scientists described their success in an edition of Cell Research. Now, the vast majority of DNA in the embryos was human, but the rabbit eggs contained a small amount of DNA contained outside the nucleus in the rod-like bodies, good old mitochondria, which supply energy. Now, there was a pro-life charity that reacted with disgust at the news. Look, these guys weren't the first people to try it. They were just the first to pull it off. It was unique when compared to other experiments, because the vast majority of the DNA was human. Once again, just a small amount of DNA was taken from rabbits, meaning that whatever came out would have been more man than animal, but the world never got to see what they made. It's one thing to give a pig a human lung, but one experiment blurred the lines between human and animal in a way that no other has. In 2014, a team of researchers gave mice millions of human brain cells. The researchers replaced almost every cell in the mouse brains with human cells, leaving only the original mouse neurons intact. Once inside, the human cells almost completely took over the mouse brains. Within a year, their cells had been completely replaced by the human brain cells. Each mouse had about 12 million human cells at work inside their strange hybrid brains. Now, scientists ran some really horrible tests on the mice. In their main experiment, the researchers played a noise before attacking the mice with an electric shock. Then scientists measured how the mice reacted the next time that they heard the, angry sound. It was very twisted. But it did show the researchers that the memories of those modified mice were 4 times stronger than those of a normal mouse. In 2009, there were scientists in Russia and Belarus who genetically modified goats to produce human milk. They weren't able to make the milk 100% human-made, but they were able to fill it with human cells, creating milk that had 60% of the elements that characterize human milk. And they weren't the only folks who did it. Shortly after, a Chinese team made a whole herd of like 300 cattle that produced human milk. Now, the goal was to get this human milk on grocery store shelves. The scientists wanted a way to harvest human milk on an assembly line. They were kind of positive that people would flock to the stores with a chance to buy a bottle for their family. Heck, the Russian team even advertised that its human milk made delicious cheese. The Chinese team originally planned to have their product in stores by 2014, but a lukewarm reception pushed back their plan. These days, they're just working on convincing the world that human milk coming from a mutant cow is something worth buying. And once they do, you'll be able to pick it up. Zonkies and Zedonks have been on the market for many years. They were raised by Charles Darwin and are mentioned in his work Origin of Species, written back in 1859. Before Darwin's time, there was a man named Lord Morton who crossbred horses in 1815, and those hybrids existed in captivity for many years. So just so you know, a Zonkie is a cross between a zebra male and a female donkey, whereas a Zedonk is the offspring of a donkey male and a female zebra. Don't get them confused. These species are intermediate between parent species and contain characteristics from both. So for instance, they possess the straight black and white striping of the zebra, while still having the muscular and stocky body of a donkey. Despite their appearance, they're really fascinating creatures if we're talking behavior. It's pretty obvious, zebras are wild animals, they're very aggressive, and therefore you can't really tame that easily. So the crossbreed of these species also affects the growth of the aggressive qualities. They have some useful features. They have the stamina of a donkey, and once again, the speed and strength of a zebra. This can make them useful work animals that can be used to pull heavy loads. Yes, the utility of these creatures is kind of questionable, and there's more points concerning, such as their ethical creation and imprisonment. Well, that's all for today, folks. I've been Alexa. See ya!